The cabin of Sky Nova's first class is hushed, tension thick in the air. Naomi Carter, elegant in her navy suit, stands frozen with her boarding pass in hand. Across from her, flight attendant Linda Harper's voice drips with disdain. "People like you don't belong here. Move, before I call security." Gasps ripple through the luxurious cabin as passengers glance over gleaming leather seats, pretending not to stare but unable to look away. Naomi doesn't flinch. She simply locks eyes with Linda, steady and unyielding. In that silence, a storm brews. One that will shake not only this flight, but an entire airline. The first-class cabin of Sky Nova Airways gleamed with polished chrome and supple leather, every detail designed to exude wealth and exclusivity. Passengers had settled into their wide recliners, some sipping champagne, others scrolling through tablets, the quiet hum of air conditioning filling the silence. It should have been the beginning of a smooth flight from Chicago to Dallas. Instead, the atmosphere was suffocating, all eyes locked on the confrontation unfolding near seat 3A. Naomi Carter stood rigid, her posture impeccable, her tailored navy suit a study in controlled elegance. In her hand, she held a crisp boarding pass that clearly read, "Seat 3A, First Class." Yet the paper seemed meaningless under the sharp gaze of flight attendant Linda Harper. Linda's lips curled in disdain, her voice slicing through the quiet like a blade. "People like you don't belong here. Move, before I call security." A collective gasp rippled through the cabin. An elderly couple clutched hands, exchanging nervous glances. A businessman shifted uncomfortably in his seat, pretending to bury himself in his laptop. Across the aisle, a young man discreetly tilted his phone upright, camera already recording. He wasn't the only one. A woman in the back of the cabin angled her device too, her expression unreadable as she pressed record. The digital age never let cruelty remain private. Naomi felt the weight of every stare, the silent judgment pressing against her skin. Her dark eyes locked onto Linda's, refusing to break the gaze. Years of practice had taught her restraint. She had endured countless versions of this moment, dismissed in hotel lobbies, second-guessed in boardrooms, underestimated in nearly every sphere she had walked into. But this was different. This was her father's first-class trip, a promise of ease and comfort turned into a public stage for humiliation. Walter Carter, silver-haired and dignified at 70, sat in seat 3B, watching with clenched fists. His hand, calloused from decades of mechanical labor, gripped the armrests so tightly his knuckles whitened. He opened his mouth to speak, to protect his daughter, but Naomi placed a steady hand on his arm without turning. Her eyes never left Linda. "I'm in first class," Naomi said calmly, extending the boarding pass for the second time. Her voice was level, but the tremor at the edge revealed the storm brewing beneath. Linda didn't look at the ticket. She didn't need to. In her mind, the answer was already written across Naomi's skin. Her presence an offense to the curated image of first-class exclusivity. She smirked, shaking her head slowly, letting the humiliation sink in deeper. "Do you know how much these seats cost? Over $2,000. Don't waste my time. People like you." She cut herself short, but the implication hung heavy in the stale air. A few rows back, a woman lowered her magazine, her lips pressed tightly together, but she said nothing. The silence of complicity echoed louder than Linda's words. Passengers watched, torn between discomfort and curiosity, unwilling to intervene, but hungry to see how the drama unfolded. Naomi inhaled slowly, centering herself. Every muscle in her body screamed to lash out, to throw back the venom dripping from Linda's tongue. But she stayed still, spine unyielding. Her father's presence beside her anchored her in composure. She would not break. Not here, not in front of him. "Here is my ticket," Naomi repeated, firmer this time, holding it higher for all to see. "Seat 3A, this is my seat." Linda snatched the slip of paper, glancing at it with exaggerated disinterest. She handed it back without meeting Naomi's eyes. "I don't care what's printed here. Mistakes happen. You don't belong in this section. I can handle this quietly, or I can call the captain. Your choice." Her words were sharp, but her tone was louder than necessary, pitched so the entire cabin could hear. The humiliation wasn't accidental. It was deliberate. Walter shifted in his seat, anger radiating off him. "Young lady," he began, his voice trembling with restrained fury. Naomi squeezed his arm gently, silencing him. "It's okay, Dad," she murmured, though her own heart thundered in her chest. Her gaze returned to Linda. "Call the captain." Linda blinked, momentarily thrown off by the lack of retreat. She had expected begging, apologies, maybe even tears. Not this calm defiance. Narrowing her eyes, she leaned toward the intercom phone mounted by the galley wall. "As you wish," she muttered, her smirk returning. Passengers exchanged glances, the tension thick enough to choke on. One man whispered to his wife, "What's going on?" She shushed him, eyes locked on Naomi as though watching the opening act of a play. The young man recording zoomed in on Naomi's face, capturing the sharp contrast between her composed expression and Linda's smug hostility. Naomi stood silently, her boarding pass steady in her hand, every breath controlled. She knew this moment would not end here, not when the camera lenses were already capturing every second, not when the truth of who she was lay coiled beneath layers of secrecy. And as Linda's fingers wrapped around the cabin phone, her voice sharp with false authority, Naomi Carter remained utterly still, outwardly calm, inwardly unbreakable. Somewhere in the back, a woman's phone vibrated. A notification blinked across the screen. New video uploaded. Passenger confrontation in first class. The storm had already begun. Walter Carter had never been a man who backed down from disrespect. 70 years of life had taught him that dignity was often the only currency poor men could afford to guard. And he had carried that lesson into every fight, every workplace disagreement, every confrontation in his small corner of the world. And now, watching his only daughter being spoken to like a trespasser, he felt something inside him snap. His body leaned forward in the wide recliner, veins pressing against the skin of his neck, jaw set like stone. He opened his mouth, voice loaded with thunder. "Young lady, you have no right to go." But Naomi's hand was there again, light but firm on his arm. Her touch froze him more effectively than any shouted order ever could. She didn't look at him, didn't break eye contact with the sneering flight attendant. Her expression was controlled steel. "It's okay, Dad," she murmured, her tone soft, almost gentle. Walter wanted to argue, to tell her it wasn't okay, that she didn't deserve this, that no one did. But the quiet authority in her voice, so much like her late mother's, halted him. He sank back into the leather seat, fists still tight, chest heaving. His eyes burned with unshed fury. Linda Harper, oblivious to the silent war between father and daughter, mistook Walter's retreat as a victory. She smirked, brushing a strand of blonde hair back into her bun, her entire posture radiating smug superiority. "Good. You know better than to cause a scene," she said, deliberately loud enough for the surrounding passengers. The words knifed into Walter, but Naomi didn't flinch. Her posture didn't change. She stood with her shoulders back, gaze steady, the very image of restraint. To the cabin, she looked like a woman cornered, outnumbered, overpowered, a victim enduring humiliation with no lifeline. And that was exactly the illusion Naomi allowed them to see. She knew every eye was on her, measuring her worth in silence. If she fought back now, she would only be another angry black woman story whispered in airport lounges. If she raised her voice, she would confirm every stereotype Linda wanted to impose on her. So she stayed still, calm, giving the audience what they expected: weakness, resignation. It was the shield she had worn all her life, one that disguised the arsenal waiting beneath. Walter's heart ached. To him, this wasn't strategy. It was his daughter being crushed in front of strangers while he sat paralyzed by her plea for patience. He looked at her profile, the way the light from the cabin ceiling highlighted the strong line of her jaw, and saw the little girl who once stood on a milk crate to look him in the eye, demanding he teach her how to fix an engine because she wanted to understand how things worked. That little girl had fire. Where had it gone now? Around them, the cabin seemed to settle into uneasy acceptance. The passengers returned to their devices, their champagne flutes, pretending not to watch while their eyes darted back every few seconds. They wanted drama without responsibility, outrage without risk. But not everyone remained passive. 2 rows ahead, in seat 1C, a tall man with salt and pepper hair and a sharp, tailored suit adjusted his cufflinks. His face was half hidden by the glow of his tablet, but his eyes, piercing, calculating, were fixed firmly on Naomi. Recognition flickered there, subtle but unmistakable. He knew her. Richard Sloan, CEO of a multinational logistics corporation and one of the largest potential clients Sky Nova had been courting, shifted slightly in his seat. He had seen Naomi once, across a boardroom table, presenting with quiet confidence that left seasoned executives scrambling to keep up. He remembered her, though she had introduced herself then only as a senior executive. He had left the meeting impressed, intrigued, and now, here she was, standing in humiliation, accused of trespassing in a cabin she arguably owned. His brows knit together. What game was she playing? Why wasn't she defending herself? Why didn't she reveal who she was? Richard's hand hovered over the call button, a reflexive urge to intervene, to silence the venom spilling from Linda's mouth. But he stopped himself. This was not his battle. Not yet. Instead, he leaned back, watching, waiting. Observation sometimes yielded more power than action. He wanted to see what Naomi Carter would do when pushed to the edge. Naomi caught the brief flicker of recognition in Richard's gaze, but said nothing. She didn't need allies, not yet. The time for revelation would come, and when it did, it would shake the foundations of this cabin, and perhaps the industry beyond it. For now, she wore the mask of submission. Linda, drunk on the illusion of control, pressed forward. "Listen," she said, her voice syrupy with condescension. "This isn't personal. It's just rules, standards. First class is for a certain caliber of passenger. And frankly," she let her eyes trail deliberately from Naomi's head to her shoes before curling her lip, "you don't quite fit the image?" A flush rose in Walter's cheeks. His knuckles whitened against the armrest. He was seconds away from erupting, his pride screaming louder than his daughter's restraint. Naomi's hand pressed his forearm again. Steady. Grounding. She leaned just slightly, her voice so low only he could hear. "Trust me. Trust." The word cut through his fury, disarming him. He sat back, breath shaking, torn between helpless rage and paternal faith. Passengers nearby exchanged whispers, some eyes sympathetic, others coldly judgmental. The narrative was writing itself. A woman who didn't belong, trying to hold ground she hadn't earned. Richard Sloan crossed one leg over the other, steepling his fingers beneath his chin. He studied Naomi's calm expression, the quiet steel beneath her composure, and thought to himself, this isn't over. She's playing a longer game. And as Linda turned toward the cabin phone to escalate matters further, Naomi Carter stood motionless, serene in the storm, giving the world exactly what it expected, while preparing to shatter those expectations in ways no one could yet imagine. The illusion of weakness was the strongest weapon she had ever wielded. The confrontation should have ended with the captain's call, but Linda Harper was not one to release her grip once she had sunk her claws in. To her, Naomi's calm composure felt like a challenge, a refusal to bend that demanded escalation. And Linda had made a career out of reminding people of their place. The first skirmish came with the meal service. Linda moved down the aisle with a tray, her smile fixed in place for the other passengers, her tone sweet as honey as she placed entrees and wine on crisp white tablecloths. When she reached Naomi and Walter's row, Her expression shifted, a calculated sharpness replacing the professional mask. She set down Naomi's plate with a loud clink, the porcelain rattling against the tray table. "Chicken or pasta?" she asked curtly, though Naomi had already given her preference at boarding. "Chicken, please," Naomi answered evenly. Linda returned a few minutes later, dropping a dry, half-burned piece of chicken breast before her, accompanied by a stale roll. For Walter, the plate was presented with deliberate care, steaming pasta with sauce, garnished properly. The insult was clear. Walter's face darkened, and he started to speak, but Naomi rested her hand on his again, silently begging him not to. Her fork hovered over the plate, but she didn't eat. Instead, she smiled faintly, as though the charade had no effect. Linda wasn't finished. Midway through the meal, she returned, her brows raised in mock concern. "Excuse me, ma'am. May I see your boarding pass again? Just to verify." Naomi's jaw tightened, but she kept her voice steady. "You've already checked it. Twice." Linda tilted her head, the picture of false innocence. "Yes, but sometimes passengers wander into the wrong cabin. It happens more often than you'd think." She extended her hand expectantly. Every passenger in earshot knew the implication. Naomi had stolen a seat that wasn't hers. Naomi pulled the boarding pass from her blazer pocket and handed it over without a word. She allowed Linda's little performance to play out, knowing each act of cruelty was another brick in the wall Linda was building around herself, one that would eventually collapse. From across the aisle, whispers began. "This is ridiculous," muttered a woman in pearls, leaning toward her husband. "Maybe she did sneak in," her husband whispered back. "She doesn't look like the type." His voice trailed off when he noticed the phone in his wife's lap, recording discreetly. The cabin was splitting down in visible lines. Some passengers shifted uncomfortably, sympathetic to Naomi but unwilling to risk confrontation. Others nodded along with Linda's insinuations, their biases confirmed by the spectacle. At the far end of the cabin, near seat 6D, a woman adjusted her glasses and angled her tablet slightly. Her name was Clara Jennings, a freelance journalist with a reputation for chasing stories of corporate misconduct and human interest scandals. She had boarded this flight hoping for little more than a few quiet hours to edit her latest piece. Now, she had stumbled into a drama that practically begged to be written. Clara tapped the record button on her phone, sliding it onto her tray table with the microphone facing forward. Her fingers moved quickly across her tablet, noting down snippets of dialogue. "People like you don't belong here. Sometimes passengers wander into the wrong cabin." She glanced over the rim of her glasses, her pulse quickening. This wasn't just a passenger spat. This was something larger, uglier. And judging by the way Naomi carried herself, Clara suspected it wasn't over yet. Back near seat 3A, Linda handed Naomi's boarding pass back with a dismissive flick, the corners of her mouth twisting. "You see," she said loudly, "it says 3A, but maybe the system glitched. Mistakes happen." Walters slammed his palm against the armrest, the crack startling nearby passengers. "That's enough," he barked, his voice gravelly with age and rage. Heads whipped around, eyes widening. For the first time, the silence broke into open murmurs. Naomi placed a hand on his forearm, her voice calm but firm. "Dad, please." The two words were enough. Walter's shoulders sagged, his fury leashed but not extinguished. His eyes, however, glared daggers into Linda. Linda straightened, her smile smug. She believed she had won. The old man subdued, the young woman still silent. What more proof did the passengers need that she was in control? Clara Jennings's pen scratched faster against her digital screen. She didn't intervene, yet. But she knew a story when she saw one, and this was unfolding like a script written for outrage. Naomi sat back down slowly, her posture poised, her face composed. To any casual observer, she looked defeated, beaten into compliance. Yet her eyes, dark and unyielding, burned with a fire that only a few noticed. Richard Sloan, the businessman in 1C, watched quietly. He saw through the mask, saw the calculation in Naomi's restraint. He glanced toward Clara at the back, noticing her scribbling furiously. A thought formed in his mind. This moment would not remain confined to this cabin. It was going to spill far beyond it, into headlines, into boardrooms, and Naomi Carter knew it too. That's why she let Linda continue. That's why she stayed silent, enduring the slow burn of humiliation. Every cruel word, every petty slight, was another nail in Linda's own coffin, one she was building with her bare hands, unaware of the grave she dug. The tension swelled, thick enough to suffocate. Whispers hummed like static electricity, judgment crackling in every glance. The cabin was no longer neutral ground. It had become an arena, and at its center, Naomi Carter sat calm, weaponizing silence, biding her time. The cabin had settled into a fragile rhythm of whispers and sidelong glances, but beneath the polished veneer of first-class luxury, tension pulsed like a hidden current. Linda Harper moved with renewed arrogance, convinced she had established her dominance. Each time she passed Naomi's seat, she let her gaze linger just long enough to remind everyone who controlled this space. Or so she thought. But not everyone in uniform shared her confidence. Michael Turner, one of the junior flight attendants, carried a tray of champagne flutes down the aisle. He was new to Skynova Airways, only 6 months into the job, and still clung to the meticulous rules of service drilled into him during training. His job was to anticipate, to provide comfort, not to confront. Yet when he reached seat 3A, his steps faltered. Naomi Carter extended her boarding pass again, an act she repeated only because Linda demanded it. Michael glanced at the slip of paper, preparing to nod politely and move on. But then his eyes landed on the name. Naomi Carter. The syllables clicked into place like a lock opening. Recognition flashed across his features, a subtle widening of his eyes before he masked it quickly. He had seen that name before, not in the roster of passengers, but in corporate newsletters, training modules, and even whispered conversations among staff. The elusive CEO, the founder, the one who rarely appeared in public but whose decisions shaped the company's future. Michael's breath caught. He looked up at her, meeting her gaze for only a fraction of a second. But it was enough. Naomi's eyes, calm and unreadable, told him everything. Don't say a word. He swallowed hard, nodded slightly, and continued down the aisle, his pulse quickening. If Linda realized who she was tormenting, the fallout would be catastrophic. Naomi settled back into her seat, her face an unreadable mask. Outwardly, she appeared passive, enduring. Inwardly, her mind worked with precision. Each humiliation Linda piled upon her was being documented, by phones, by whispers, and now, by memory. And Naomi understood the power of narrative better than most. Sometimes the story you allowed others to tell was more devastating than anything you could craft yourself. Her phone buzzed softly in her blazer pocket. Sliding it out with practiced discretion, she unlocked the screen and glanced at the message. Board meeting update. Press circling the union dispute. Call me ASAP. Maya Patel, her chief of staff, never sent messages lightly. Naomi read the line twice, her jaw tightening ever so slightly. The timing was brutal. A labor dispute had already positioned Skynova under scrutiny, and now here she was, being humiliated in her own cabin. If this went public, and she had no doubt it would, the consequences would ripple far beyond this flight. Walter leaned slightly toward her, whispering, "Everything all right, sweetheart?" Naomi slipped the phone back into her pocket, masking the flicker of steel in her eyes. "Everything's fine, Dad," she said softly. But it wasn't. Clara Jennings, the journalist at the back, adjusted the focus of her phone camera. Through her lens, she caught Naomi's momentary shift, her eyes narrowing, the subtle tightening of her posture after reading the message. Clara couldn't decipher the details, but she sensed importance. This wasn't just a wronged passenger. Something deeper pulsed beneath the surface. Richard Sloan noticed it too. From his vantage in 1C, he studied Naomi as she returned the phone to her pocket. She carried herself like no ordinary passenger, measured, deliberate, each move calculated. Sloan leaned back, his curiosity deepening. He didn't intervene. Not yet. The game unfolding intrigued him too much. Linda, oblivious to the undercurrents, strutted down the aisle again, her voice carrying false cheer as she offered dessert options to other passengers. When she reached Naomi, she didn't bother to hide her disdain. "We only have one option left," she said flatly, placing a dish of half-melted sorbet before her. Walter bristled. Naomi, however, only lifted her spoon with delicate calm, stirring the melting dessert without taking a bite. Her stillness spoke louder than anger ever could. Michael passed again, collecting empty trays. His eyes flicked briefly to Naomi, his throat tightening with the weight of unspoken recognition. She gave no signal, no nod, but her silence was command enough. Not yet. Back in 6D, Clara continued recording, her journalist's instinct sharpening. She scrolled through her notes, stitching together a narrative. Blatant discrimination, a daughter shielding her father from confrontation, a passenger maintaining grace under fire. But her instincts screamed there was more. Naomi's composure wasn't just personal dignity, it was strategy. Clara didn't know what secret Naomi held, but she was determined to find out. The cabin's tension rose again as Linda announced loudly, "Captain Reynolds will be coming soon to sort this out. I don't want any disturbances in my cabin." The phrasing wasn't lost on the passengers. Her cabin. Linda had claimed ownership of something that was never hers to begin with. Phones angled higher. A ripple of anticipation moved through the rows. The stage was being set for confrontation. Naomi rested her palms lightly on her lap, her face calm, her breathing steady. Outwardly, she remained the picture of quiet endurance. Inwardly, she counted the beats. Each insult, each dismissal, each petty cruelty was adding weight to the moment about to arrive. The storm was gathering momentum. The world didn't yet know who Naomi Carter truly was, but hints were bleeding through the cracks. A young attendant's startled recognition, a secret message from a chief of staff, the lens of a journalist capturing every detail. Linda Harper believed she was scripting Naomi's downfall. In truth, she was only setting the stage for Naomi's revelation. The first-class cabin of Flight 227 had become a theater, and the curtain had only just begun to rise. Linda Harper had reached her boiling point. All the subtle digs, the theatrical boarding pass checks, the condescending tone, none of it had yielded the reaction she craved. Naomi Carter refused to snap, refused to flinch, refused to give her the satisfaction of breaking. To Linda, that defiance felt like mockery. Her heels clicked sharply against the polished floor as she planted herself before Naomi's seat once more. Hands on her hips, chin tilted in manufactured authority, she spoke loud enough for the entire cabin to hear. "That's it. I've had enough. If you won't cooperate, I'll have the captain deal with this." Gasps fluttered through the cabin like wind through leaves. A ripple of murmurs followed, passengers leaning in as though the declaration were the opening act of a play they couldn't turn away from. Walter stiffened instantly. His head snapped toward Linda, fury crackling in his aging frame. His voice was already rising when Naomi beat him to it. "Go ahead," Naomi said. The words were simple, almost casual, yet they landed in the air with a weight that silenced even the whispers. Linda blinked, taken aback. For the first time in this entire exchange, it was she who faltered. She had expected pleading, resistance, perhaps even tears. Instead, she was met with a calm invitation, delivered with a faint smile that didn't reach Naomi's eyes. The effect was disorienting. Walter's jaw dropped. He turned to his daughter, staring at her in disbelief. He had raised Naomi to fight for her dignity, to never let anyone diminish her worth. And yet, here she was, meeting cruelty not with anger, but with something entirely different, an almost serene confidence. "What are you doing?" he whispered fiercely, voice trembling. "This isn't something to let slide. You can't just—" Naomi placed her hand lightly on his wrist, her touch both soothing and commanding. Her eyes met his, steady and unyielding. "Trust me, Dad." 2 words again, the same words she had used before, but this time they carried a different charge. Not just a plea for patience, but a promise of something more. Walter froze, searching her face. She wasn't cowed. She wasn't broken. Beneath the calm, he saw it now. A flicker of something sharp, deliberate. She was waiting, calculating. For the first time, he felt a shiver of awe. His daughter wasn't just enduring. She was orchestrating. Linda mistook the silence between father and daughter as concession. Straightening her posture, she smirked and reached for the cabin intercom. "Fine, we'll settle this once and for all." At the far end of the cabin, Clara Jennings's eyes lit up behind her glasses. Her recorder was already running, but she leaned forward slightly, capturing every movement. The story was gaining layers, her instincts screaming that this confrontation was about to break open. Richard Sloane in 1C leaned back, steepling his fingers as a knowing smile played on his lips. There it is, he thought. She's letting the storm come to her. Naomi crossed one leg over the other, her expression serene. To anyone else, it might look like defeat, but for those paying attention, her posture radiated control. She wasn't being dragged into Linda's game. She was forcing Linda to escalate, to dig her own grave. Linda lifted the intercom receiver, her voice sharp. "Captain Reynolds, please report to the first-class cabin immediately. Passenger issue." She emphasized the last words, her eyes flicking smugly toward Naomi. Whispers swelled again. "The captain?" one man muttered. "Over a seat?" "This is getting out of hand," another passenger said, though his phone remained firmly pointed at the scene. Walter's pulse hammered in his ears. He wanted to scream, to demand the humiliation end, but Naomi's hand still rested on his wrist, her calm a counterweight to his rage. Slowly, almost against his will, he leaned back in his seat, trusting her. For the first time, he saw not just his daughter but something larger, a woman who seemed to command storms. Naomi's gaze remained forward, unblinking, her faint smile still in place. She knew exactly what she was doing. The seconds stretched, the cabin holding its breath. Michael, the young attendant, shifted nervously by the galley. He knew the captain was on his way, and he knew what it would mean when he recognized Naomi. He glanced at her boarding pass, still fresh in his memory. Her name burned into his mind. He had to bite his tongue not to warn Linda, not to betray the unspoken command Naomi had given him with her eyes. Clara's fingers flew across her tablet, annotating every detail. Passenger accused, father restrained. Flight attendant calls captain, subject calm. Anticipation rising. She had covered countless confrontations, but this one was different. There was a gravity to Naomi's presence that Clara couldn't shake. Linda, satisfied with her performance, returned the receiver to its cradle and crossed her arms. She turned toward the passengers, her smirk daring them to question her authority. No one spoke. Phones recorded. Eyes judged. And then Naomi did something unexpected. She leaned back against her seat, exhaled slowly, and whispered, not loudly enough for Linda, but for Walter and for those close enough to catch it. "Now watch." Walter blinked. He had never heard that tone from her before. Calm, certain, commanding. It wasn't the voice of a daughter seeking protection. It was the voice of a leader who knew the outcome before the battle began. Passengers shifted, sensing something in the air they couldn't quite place. The humiliation was still there, the imbalance still sharp. But now there was a new undercurrent, a tension not of defeat, but of anticipation. Naomi's faint smile returned, sharper this time, tinged with the confidence of someone holding a secret. She wasn't waiting to be rescued. She was waiting for the curtain to rise. The hush that fell over the first-class cabin was unlike anything it had endured before. Conversations died mid-sentence. The faint clinking of cutlery and glasses stopped. Even the steady hum of the engine seemed muted, as though the aircraft itself understood the gravity of what was about to unfold. The sound of footsteps, measured, heavy, deliberate, echoed from the corridor leading into the cabin. The polished shoes appeared first, followed by crisp navy trousers, then the gleam of golden stripes on dark sleeves. Finally, Captain Kevin Reynolds stepped into view. At 6 feet tall, with broad shoulders and an air of authority that came from decades in the cockpit, Captain Reynolds carried himself with the calm precision of a man accustomed to control. His cap was tucked neatly under one arm, his eyes scanning the cabin with the detached sharpness of a pilot assessing turbulence. But when those eyes settled on Naomi Carter, a ripple of recognition broke across his face, too quick for most to notice, but unmistakable for those who did. He knew her. Linda Harper surged forward with an air of triumph, as though she had summoned a king to preside over her victory. "Captain," she began, her tone dripping with vindication, "this passenger is occupying a seat that does not belong to her. I have checked her boarding pass multiple times, but there must have been a system error. She is refusing to comply." She stepped aside, gesturing dramatically toward Naomi, like a prosecutor presenting evidence. "She has been disruptive and uncooperative. I request your intervention." The passengers collectively leaned closer, eager to witness the climax of the tension they had been recording, whispering and speculating over. Phones tilted subtly toward the aisle, ready to capture the fallout. Walter Carter gripped the armrest, his old eyes narrowing. He was ready to spring, to defend his daughter, when Naomi gently raised her hand, an unspoken command to wait. Naomi herself remained seated, her posture regal, her gaze locked calmly on the captain. She had not moved since the moment Linda called him. Only the faintest curve of her lips betrayed anything, a smile that carried the weight of inevitability. Kevin Reynolds paused. The silence that followed Linda's accusation stretched thin, taut as a wire. His gaze lingered on Naomi, his brow furrowing ever so slightly. A flicker of something unreadable passed through his eyes, recognition, hesitation, perhaps even unease. But then, he cleared his throat, turning his attention back to Linda. His voice was deep, even, carrying the authority of the cockpit into the cabin. "Explain exactly what happened, Ms. Harper." Linda puffed her chest, emboldened. "This passenger presented a boarding pass for seat 3A. However, it is clear there has been a mistake. She doesn't fit the profile of our first-class clientele, and her behavior has been disruptive. For the comfort of others, I recommend she be relocated or removed." Murmurs rippled again, sharper now. A businessman whispered, "Doesn't fit the profile?" His companion frowned but said nothing. Phones caught every syllable. Captain Reynolds' eyes flickered toward Naomi once more. She met his gaze evenly, unblinking, her silence a challenge. For a moment, his lips parted, as though he might speak her name. But then, he shut it again, turning back to Linda. The hesitation was brief, but it was enough. To the passengers, it looked like confirmation. The captain, too, doubted Naomi's place here. Walter's heart pounded, fear clawing at his chest. "He's going to side with her," he thought bitterly. "He's going to let that woman throw my daughter out like she's nothing." Naomi, however, remained utterly still. Clara Jennings adjusted her glasses at the back of the cabin, her recording device angled precisely toward the captain. She had caught it, the flicker of recognition, the pause, the shift in his demeanor. She scribbled into her notes. "Captain hesitates. He knows her." A story was blooming, richer than she had dared hope. Linda mistook the hesitation for backing. She pressed forward, her tone sharper. "You see, Captain? She's just sitting there. No apology, no explanation. She refuses to admit she doesn't belong. This isn't the kind of image we want for Skynova Airways." Her words dripped with irony, though she didn't realize it. The captain turned slowly toward Naomi once more. The weight of his gaze pressed heavy on the cabin. Every passenger leaned forward, breaths held, waiting. Naomi finally moved. She reached into her blazer pocket and withdrew her boarding pass, placing it calmly on the tray table before her. Without a word, she slid it forward. Captain Reynolds stepped closer, taking the slip between two fingers. His eyes scanned it briefly, though he didn't need to. He already knew it was legitimate. He already knew exactly who sat before him, but he said nothing. The silence stretched again, the cabin thick with anticipation. To the watching passengers, the pause felt damning. Why didn't he immediately vindicate her? Why didn't he confirm what the paper said? Whispers grew bolder. Maybe she really doesn't belong. Look at the captain's face. He's not convinced. Unbelievable. Walter clenched his fists, his body trembling with fury. He opened his mouth, but Naomi touched his hand again, steady as stone. Her eyes never left the captain's. For one terrible moment, it seemed as though the tide had turned. The authority figure had arrived, and even he appeared to doubt her. Linda crossed her arms, smugness radiating. "Well?" she asked, her tone oozing satisfaction. Kevin Reynolds inhaled slowly. He had spent years navigating turbulence, storms, emergencies that rattled even the steadiest pilots. Yet this moment weighed heavier than any cockpit decision. He knew Naomi Carter. He knew who she was, not just a passenger, not just a woman wrongly accused, but the very lifeblood of the airline whose wings he commanded. And still, he hesitated, because to reveal it here in this moment meant exposing a truth Naomi herself had not yet spoken. He had no right to steal her stage. So he stood there, silent, letting the illusion hang in the air. For the passengers, the silence confirmed their worst assumptions. Naomi was the trespasser. Naomi was the fraud. The captain's hesitation sealed it. The tension was unbearable. Walter looked at his daughter with despair, unable to understand her composure. "Why are you letting this happen?" he whispered hoarsely. Naomi's lips curved into the faintest of smiles. "Because it's not over," she whispered back. And in that instant, though he didn't yet know how, Walter understood. She was holding her ground not because she had lost, but because she was preparing to win. The cabin, however, saw only the surface. A woman cornered, an attendant triumphant, a captain seemingly aligned with the accuser. The stage was set. The fall appeared inevitable, but storms always build their quietest pressure before they break. The silence in the cabin was suffocating. Every eye remained fixed on Captain Kevin Reynolds as he held Naomi's boarding pass in his hand. Linda Harper stood tall beside him, her smugness dripping like honey, convinced she had cornered her prey. Walter's chest heaved with fury and helplessness, and Naomi Carter, still seated in her wide leather recliner, wore the same faint smile, the stillness of a predator biding its time. Finally, Captain Reynolds inhaled. His voice, steady and resonant, cut through the hush like the blade of a guillotine. "There's no mistake," he said, his gaze flicking once more between Linda and Naomi. "This passenger is in the correct seat. Her boarding pass is valid. Seat 3A is hers." Linda blinked, her smirk faltering. "But," she began, her tone sharp with disbelief. Kevin's tone sharpened, his authority filling the cabin. And more than that, he let the words hang, deliberate, savoring the weight of the moment. His eyes locked on Naomi's, a flicker of mutual recognition passing silently between them before he turned back to the room. "You should all know exactly who you've been watching." The cabin held its breath. "Ladies and gentlemen," Captain Reynolds announced, his voice carrying the finality of truth, "this is Naomi Carter, CEO and sole owner of Skynova Airways." For a second, the world seemed to stop. Then came the explosion. Gasps erupted across the cabin, audible even over the hum of the engines. Heads swiveled, phones tilted wildly, capturing the declaration from every angle. Passengers who had whispered doubts and suspicions seconds earlier now sat frozen, their faces flushed with shock. Walter Carter's mouth fell open. His eyes darted from the captain to his daughter, as if searching for denial, for some explanation. His voice came out in a whisper, almost reverent. "Naomi?" Naomi turned to him, her eyes softening, and for the first time since the confrontation began, her mask cracked just slightly. She reached for his hand, squeezing it. "Yes, Dad." Walter's chest swelled with pride, tears stinging his eyes. All the shame he had felt for being powerless vanished in an instant, replaced by awe. His daughter, the same little girl who had tinkered with engines in their garage, who had faced endless dismissals and doubt, was the woman commanding this airline. Linda Harper staggered back as though struck, her face drained of color, her lips parting soundlessly. "She's... what?" The words tumbled out, weak and fractured. Passengers who had aligned with Linda moments before now recoiled, their eyes avoiding her, their whispers sharp with judgment. The smug certainty that had fueled her performance evaporated, leaving only the raw, humiliating truth. From the back of the cabin, Clara Jennings nearly dropped her phone. Her journalist's instincts screamed with adrenaline. This wasn't just a story about discrimination. It was the story. A powerful CEO humiliated in her own cabin, filmed, judged, then vindicated before the very eyes of the world. Clara typed furiously, already framing the headline in her mind. And then came the final twist. Richard Sloan, the seasoned businessman in 1C who had sat quietly observing, suddenly rose from his seat. His demeanor shifted instantly from cool detachment to eager respect. He buttoned his jacket, smoothed his tie, and crossed the aisle with a practiced smile. "Miss Carter," he said warmly, extending his hand. "Forgive me for not recognizing you sooner. It's an honor. We met briefly at the Aurora Group Summit last spring." The sudden transformation was jarring. Just minutes earlier, Sloan had been content to watch silently, curious but detached. Now he scrambled to align himself with the truth, eager to claim association. Naomi regarded his hand for a moment before shaking it politely. Her expression remained calm, but her eyes flickered with amusement. She had seen this dance countless times, respect offered only when power revealed itself. Other passengers followed suit. Murmurs of apology rippled through the cabin. A woman in pearls stammered, I didn't realize." A man who had whispered about her sneaking in now avoided her gaze altogether. Linda, trembling, stepped forward. Her voice cracked as she tried to salvage her authority. I didn't know. If I had realized..." Captain Reynolds cut her off sharply. "Your job, Ms. Harper, is to serve every passenger with dignity and respect, not to decide who belongs. Today, you failed." His words were calm, but the condemnation hit harder than a shout. Linda's knees nearly buckled. She opened her mouth to protest, but no words came. Her power had disintegrated in an instant, her authority exposed for the sham it was. Naomi finally spoke, her voice soft yet resonant, cutting through the storm. "Respect should never be conditional," she said, her eyes sweeping the cabin. "Not on wealth, not on appearance, not on assumptions. Everyone here deserves dignity. That's what first class should mean." Her words hung in the air, undeniable, unshakable. Passengers nodded, some with shame, others with newfound admiration. Walter, still clutching her hand, looked at his daughter with pride so overwhelming it silenced the ache of all the years behind them. She had not only survived the humiliation, she had turned it into a moment of truth for everyone watching. Clara Jennings smiled behind her glasses, whispering to herself as her recorder blinked red. History just wrote itself. The cabin, once divided, now shifted. The tide had turned. Naomi Carter was no longer a victim in their eyes. She was the storm that had broken over them, the justice they had witnessed in real time. And for the first time since the flight began, the passengers of Seat 3A were silent, not because they doubted her, but because they had been humbled by her truth. The cabin still hummed with the aftershocks of revelation. Naomi Carter, once dismissed as an intruder, now sat at the center of a storm she had quietly allowed to build. Phones still hovered, some passengers whispering apologies, others shaking their heads in disbelief at how wrong they had been. Linda Harper, pale and trembling, stood rooted to the floor, her entire career teetering on the edge of collapse. The silence stretched, suffocating, broken only by the steady hum of the engines and Walter's uneven breaths. He was still gripping Naomi's hand as if it were the only anchor in this upside-down world. His daughter, his little girl, was not just the passenger under fire. She was the owner, the CEO, the architect of everything these people flew on. Walter's voice cracked, low and hoarse. "Naomi, why didn't you tell me?" Naomi's eyes softened, but she didn't answer right away. Instead, she turned her gaze back to Linda, who stood trembling under the weight of her mistake. Passengers shifted, anticipation thick in the air. They knew what was coming. Justice. Retribution. Linda herself braced for it, her lips pressed into a thin, bloodless line. Her mind raced through every headline she would never escape, every door that would slam shut, every humiliation her downfall would invite. She waited for the inevitable, but Naomi Carter did not deliver the expected blow. Instead, she rose slowly, her movements deliberate, graceful. She smoothed the crease of her navy blazer, adjusted her cuff, and looked Linda directly in the eye. When she finally spoke, her voice was low, steady, carrying the authority of truth. "Monday morning, 9 o'clock, my office." The words landed with more force than any shouted command. The passengers blinked, stunned. Walter froze, trying to process what he had just heard. Even Clara Jennings, who had already begun to draft the headline, "CEO Fires Racist Attendant in Public," stopped mid-keystroke, her brows lifting above her glasses. Linda's jaw dropped. She blinked rapidly, as if waiting for Naomi to finish the sentence, to add the word terminated, dismissed, or blacklisted. But Naomi said nothing more. Her composure did not falter. Her eyes stayed fixed on Linda's, unyielding yet not cruel. The silence that followed was almost unbearable, forcing everyone to realize what had just happened. Naomi was not choosing vengeance. She was choosing something deeper, harder: reform. Linda's knees wobbled. Her mouth opened once, twice, but no words came. All the venom, the condescension, the smugness she had brandished only minutes earlier had evaporated, leaving her exposed and fragile. To be spared was almost worse than being destroyed. Passengers exchanged looks of astonishment. Some frowned, confused, while others nodded slowly, understanding dawning. Naomi wasn't here to humiliate. She wasn't here to destroy. She was here to lead, even in the face of cruelty. Walter finally found his voice. You're not firing her?" His tone was a mixture of shock and disbelief, layered with the old instinct of a man who had been taught that justice meant punishment. Naomi turned to him gently. "Dad," she said softly, "firing her would be too easy. She'd leave, find another job, and keep doing the same thing. I want her to understand. I want her to change. If she can't, then yes, she'll be gone. But I'm giving her the chance." Her words wrapped around the cabin like a balm. The tension softened, no longer electric with outrage, but heavy with emotion. Passengers shifted uncomfortably, ashamed of their silence earlier, humbled by the depth of Naomi's response. Linda lowered her head, her lips trembling. The weight of mercy was unbearable. For the first time in years, she felt something crack inside her. The brittle shell of arrogance breaking under the unexpected grace of the very woman she had tried to demean. Walter's chest swelled with a complicated tide: pride, awe, and bewilderment. He had spent his life fighting battles tooth and nail, believing survival meant striking before being struck. And now his daughter, who had endured humiliation with poise, chose not the path of destruction, but of elevation. His eyes stung with tears he didn't bother to hide. Clara Jennings blinked, her recorder still rolling. The headline she had imagined shifted, reshaped itself before her eyes. CEO chooses grace over retribution at 30,000 feet. It wasn't the story she had expected, but it was infinitely more powerful. Richard Sloan, the businessman who had earlier withheld judgment, felt a shiver of respect crawl up his spine. This was leadership, unyielding, strategic, human. He straightened in his seat, silently committing himself to the woman who had just turned a moment of humiliation into a lesson in grace. Naomi sat back down, calm as ever. "We land in a few hours," she said simply, her tone final. "Until then, let's give everyone peace." The cabin remained quiet, reverent almost, as though the passengers had witnessed something sacred. Phones lowered. Whispers ceased. For the first time since the confrontation began, silence was no longer oppressive. It was respectful. Linda Harper, shaken to her core, stepped back into the galley, her entire frame trembling. She knew she had not been spared out of weakness, but out of strength. The chance Naomi had given her was heavier than punishment, because it demanded she face herself. Walter squeezed his daughter's hand, his voice breaking. "I don't understand you, Naomi, but I've never been prouder." Naomi smiled faintly, her eyes glistening with a quiet warmth. "That's enough, Dad. That's all I need." The hum of the engines filled the space again, carrying with it a new current, not of division, not of outrage, but of humility and awe. And for every passenger in that cabin, the flight had shifted from a spectacle of humiliation into a lesson they would never forget. True power is not shown in how you strike back, but in how you choose to rise above. By the time Flight 227 touched down, the storm had already broken. Before the wheels kissed the runway, clips from passengers' phones had gone viral. A 30-second recording, Linda Harper sneering "people like you don't belong here," was replayed across every platform. Another angle caught Naomi's calm defiance, her poised silence against escalating humiliation. The most powerful clip of all was the captain's declaration, "This is Naomi Carter, CEO and sole owner of Skynova Airways." Within hours, hashtags flooded timelines. Naomi Carter, #first-class humiliation, #Skynova scandal. Millions watched, outraged and mesmerized. News anchors debated the event in urgent tones. Late-night hosts cracked jokes about attendants who had picked the wrong passenger to bully. But not all coverage painted Naomi as a hero. One headline screamed, "CEO humiliated on her own airline, but did she engineer it?" Another suggested Naomi had allowed herself to be mistreated just for spectacle. Pundits questioned whether she had weaponized victimhood for publicity. By the next morning, the press frenzy was unstoppable. Cameras camped outside Skynova's headquarters, microphones shoved at every employee who dared step outside. Reporters hounded Walter, who kept his head down, shaken by the chaos. Naomi herself became both an icon and a target overnight. Yet the fiercest storm was not outside. It was inside. The boardroom of Skynova Airways became a battlefield. Crammed with directors, advisors, and restless shareholders, the air buzzed with tension. Naomi sat at the head of the long mahogany table, her posture unflinching as voices clashed around her. "This is a PR nightmare," barked Charles Denton, one of the senior board members, his cheeks flushed crimson. "Our stock dipped 6% overnight. Investors are panicking. We can't afford this kind of exposure." Across the table, Miranda Shaw, another director, leaned forward with narrowed eyes. "What were you thinking, Naomi? Sitting there, letting it play out, letting it go viral. Do you understand what this looks like? You're not just any passenger. You're the face of this airline." Naomi folded her hands neatly before her, her gaze level. "Yes, and that's exactly why it matters. This wasn't about me. It was about the culture within this airline. If it can happen to me, what about the passengers who don't have a title to shield them?" Murmurs rippled, some thoughtful, others dismissive. But Charles slammed his palm on the table. "Don't make this about ideals. We have shareholders, obligations, profit margins. You've turned us into a spectacle. People are laughing at us. We don't need a crusader. We need stability." The word hung heavy. Crusader. Walter, seated quietly at the back, flinched. He had never liked these men with their polished shoes and polished lies. Now he watched his daughter stand alone against them, her poise steady even as they tore at her. Naomi inhaled slowly, then spoke. "Do you know what instability looks like? Instability is a company that tolerates discrimination. Instability is a brand that ignores its passengers' dignity. If we don't confront this now, the cost later will be far worse." Some nodded, reluctantly. Others glared. Richard Sloan, the businessman from Seat 1C who had quickly aligned himself after the reveal, cleared his throat. "Naomi's right. This could be an opportunity. We can own this narrative, show we take accountability." But Miranda scoffed. "Opportunity? Investors don't want a morality play, they want profits. And right now, Naomi is dragging this company into the mud. Some of us are beginning to wonder if she's too volatile for leadership." The room crackled with the unspoken threat. A coup. Naomi registered every word, every tone. She saw the lines being drawn. Some were with her, seeing the long-term vision. Others were against her, eager to twist this crisis into leverage. The knives were out, sharp and glinting under fluorescent lights. Clara Jennings's article, published that morning, lay open on several tablets around the table. The headline read, "Grace at 30,000 feet. How Naomi Carter redefined power." But for every reader who praised her, there were detractors sharpening their criticism. Naomi sat back, her face calm, though inside she felt the pressure mounting like a vice. Public outrage was volatile but manageable. Internal betrayal, that was more dangerous. Walter shifted uneasily in his seat, his fists clenching. He had wanted justice for his daughter, and she had delivered it with grace. But now he saw the cost, not in humiliation, but in power. And power, he realized, was always under siege. Back in the press rooms, headlines continued to multiply. Some called Naomi a beacon of dignity. Others accused her of performative leadership. Stock tickers flashed red, then green, then red again as the market responded to every headline. In her office late that night, Naomi stared at the city lights through the glass wall. Her phone buzzed constantly. Journalists, allies, enemies, investors. She ignored most of them. A new message popped up from Maya, her chief of staff. "They're rallying votes. You may face a challenge at the next board session. Be ready." Naomi closed her eyes briefly. She had known this was coming. The flight had revealed more than Linda's cruelty. It had exposed fractures in her own fortress. Outside, the city pulsed with life. Inside, Naomi Carter prepared for battle, not against attendants, not against prejudice, but against the very people who claimed to stand with her. And for the first time since the flight, doubt crept in. Would grace be enough to win this war? By dawn the next day, the chaos of the scandal had transformed into something else entirely. The narrative was shifting. What began as a wave of outrage now surged with admiration. Social media timelines flooded with clips not just of Naomi Carter enduring humiliation, but of the way she ended it. Passengers' shaky videos of her calm command. "Monday 9 o'clock, my office," spread like wildfire. Soon, the hashtag #HatchetInclusiveSkyNova dominated feeds across the globe. Tweets read, "True leadership is grace under fire." Naomi Carter didn't destroy her enemy. She elevated the standard. A popular influencer posted, "She could have crushed Linda Harper, but instead, she chose humanity. That's power." The post was shared hundreds of thousands of times. For once, the internet's fury turned toward construction instead of destruction. The outrage that had first fueled the scandal was redirected into something larger, a movement. People were no longer just angry at Linda Harper. They were inspired by Naomi's refusal to retaliate. And then came the catalyst. Clara Jennings, the quiet journalist at the back of the cabin, published her article. Its headline, bold and striking, read, "The CEO who chose grace at 30,000 feet." In it, Clara described the entire encounter with precision. The humiliation, the tension, the captain's reveal, and finally Naomi's surprising decision to offer mercy instead of punishment. Her prose carried weight, weaving observation with insight. "In a world addicted to vengeance," she wrote, "Naomi Carter reminded us that true authority is not proven in the power to destroy, but in the choice to forgive." The article exploded. Within hours, it was trending on every major news outlet. Late-night hosts quoted it. Morning anchors debated it. Millions shared it, hailing it as the definitive account of the incident. Clara Jennings, once an overlooked reporter, became the voice of the moment. The irony was clear. The same phones that once captured Naomi's humiliation now amplified her triumph. But amid the praise, Linda Harper became the lightning rod for public rage. Hashtags skewered her. "Fire Linda," #Sky Nova shame. Her face, captured in freeze frames mid-sneer, became the image of everything people despised about arrogance and bias. Memes mocked her. Comment sections eviscerated her. Her inbox filled with death threats. The public had chosen its villain. And yet, just when the crowd bayed for her destruction, Naomi intervened. In a press conference streamed live to millions, Naomi appeared in a simple navy dress, her voice calm and firm. "I've seen the calls for punishment. I've seen the fury. But I ask you all for restraint." Cameras clicked furiously. She continued, "Linda Harper made a mistake, a terrible one. But I did not ask for her to be destroyed. Justice is not vengeance. Sky Nova's culture will change, but change begins with accountability, not annihilation." The reporters buzzed, their questions tripping over one another. "Are you saying she keeps her job? Are you protecting her?" Naomi raised her hand, silencing them. "She will meet me on Monday at 9 o'clock, as I said on that flight. We will have a conversation about dignity, equity, and the kind of airline Sky Nova will become. What happens next will depend on her willingness to learn, not the crowd's thirst for blood." The statement stunned the world. Some scoffed, unable to believe her mercy. Others wept openly online, touched by the rare display of compassion in a corporate world known for ruthlessness. Hashtags shifted once more. Had grace. In leadership, Naomi knows best, had second chance. Even those who had once criticized Naomi for engineering the spectacle were forced to reconsider. Commentators who had doubted her motives now marveled at her consistency. She had chosen restraint not once, but twice. First in the cabin, and now before the entire world. Walter Carter watched the press conference from the sidelines, his chest tight with emotion. His daughter was no longer just the girl he had raised. She was something larger now, a symbol, a force reshaping the narrative not just of an airline, but of power itself. Tears welled in his eyes, not just pride, but awe, and a small ache of distance. The world was discovering Naomi in a way he was still catching up to. Meanwhile, Linda Harper sat in her apartment, blinds drawn, face buried in her hands as the weight of millions' hatred crushed her. And then she heard it, Naomi's voice on the television, calling for restraint, for mercy, for her. Her shoulders shook. She had expected firing, disgrace, exile. She had not expected mercy, and the shame that followed was heavier than punishment. Back online, Clara Jennings's article became scripture for the moment. Quoted endlessly, it reframed Naomi not as a victim, nor as a vengeful executive, but as a reformer. Clara herself tweeted, "I saw it with my own eyes. Naomi Carter chose not to humiliate her enemy, but to lead her." The post broke 1 million shares in under an hour. For the passengers who had filmed, for the millions who had watched, for the shareholders watching nervously from their towers, the story had changed. Naomi Carter was no longer the humiliated CEO. She was the woman who had faced fire and answered it not with destruction, but with grace. And as the sun set on that day, the storm that had threatened to engulf Sky Nova shifted. It was still dangerous. The board was still fractured. Investors still debated. But in the hearts of millions watching around the globe, one truth had already taken root. Naomi Carter had turned humiliation into humanity. And humanity, for once, was winning. The conference room at Sky Nova headquarters was overflowing. Rows of journalists, staff, board members, and shareholders filled the space, their eyes fixed on the stage where Naomi Carter stood, flanked by the Sky Nova emblem. The air buzzed with tension, half anticipation, half skepticism. The viral storm had not yet settled. Naomi knew it never would, not fully. But this was no longer about firefighting. It was about building. She stepped forward, her voice steady, carrying the weight of both authority and vision. What happened on Flight 227 is not an isolated incident. It was not the first time, nor will it be the last, unless we change. She let the words sink in, her gaze sweeping the crowd. Sky Nova cannot soar if bias anchors us. We must do better, and starting today, we will. The room hushed, expectant. Naomi pressed a button on the podium, and the screen behind her lit up with bold letters. The Clear Skies Initiative. Gasps rippled through the crowd. This program, Naomi continued, isn't a press stunt. It's a systemic overhaul. Clear Skies will retrain every employee, from cabin crew to senior management, to recognize and dismantle bias. It will include transparent reporting systems, accountability structures, and measurable goals. But most importantly, it will put passengers' dignity at the heart of everything we do. Flashes burst from the cameras. Reporters scribbled furiously. Walter, seated in the front row, watched his daughter with pride swelling so fiercely he could hardly breathe. He had seen her mercy aboard that flight, and now he saw her transform it into movement. She wasn't just mending her airline, she was rewriting the skies. Then came the twist. As part of Clear Skies, Naomi said, her voice firm but not harsh, Linda Harper will remain with us. The room erupted with murmurs, some shocked, others outraged. Board members shifted uncomfortably. A few journalists nearly jumped from their seats. Naomi raised her hand to quiet them. I know what you're thinking. This isn't forgiveness without accountability. Linda will not be treated as a victim, nor as an enemy. She will become something more powerful, a living case study. She turned toward the side of the stage, and all eyes followed. Linda Harper, pale but composed, stepped into the light. The same woman whose sneer had gone viral now looked transformed, shoulders squared, lips pressed tightly, eyes humbled. Linda, Naomi continued, has agreed to share her story, not as a badge of shame, but as a lesson. She will speak at every training session, telling her experience honestly, her assumptions, her mistake, and the aftermath. She will face the very people she once judged, and in doing so, remind us all that bias is not abstract. It is human, and it must be confronted. The reaction was electric. Some gasped in admiration. Others frowned, skeptical, but no one could deny the boldness of the decision. Linda took a small step forward, her voice trembling but audible. I never thought I'd be standing here. A week ago, I thought my career was over. I thought I'd be remembered only for the worst thing I'd ever done. But Ms. Carter offered me something no one else would, a chance to face my mistake and grow. I can't erase what I said on that flight, but I can make sure others learn from it, and that I never repeat it. For the first time, her words did not drip with arrogance. They carried the weight of sincerity. The impact was immediate. One of the senior pilots, grizzled and reserved, stood up. If we're being honest, he said slowly, I've had my own biases. I've made judgments I shouldn't have. Maybe not on a plane, but in my heart. I want to be part of this too. A flight attendant in the back nodded vigorously. Same here. I've thought things I'd never say aloud, but I know they're wrong. If she can stand here and admit it, so can we. The admission spread through the room like a current, raw and unfiltered. People who had spent their lives hiding behind professionalism found themselves confessing, their walls crumbling. It was messy, uncomfortable, and deeply human. Clara Jennings, seated among the press, felt goosebumps rise on her arms. She tapped furiously at her tablet, realizing this was no longer just about an airline. This was a movement being born in real time. Her next headline formed in her mind: Clear Skies Initiative Turns Shame into Change. Naomi let the voices flow, listening, nodding. When the room finally settled, she spoke again. Bias is not something we cure overnight. It is not solved with firings and press releases. It is solved with honesty, accountability, and the courage to face ourselves. Linda is not here because she was spared. She is here because she has work to do, and so do we all. Thunderous applause broke out, filling the hall with a roar that shook even the skeptical board members. Some clapped hesitantly, others fervently, but the sound carried the undeniable weight of momentum. Walter wiped his eyes with the back of his hand, overwhelmed. His daughter was not just leading an airline, she was leading a revolution. And she was doing it not by crushing her enemies, but by transforming them into allies. On stage, Naomi smiled faintly. She knew the battle wasn't over. The shareholders who doubted her would still whisper, the skeptics would still sneer. But she also knew something had shifted, permanently. Clear Skies was more than a program. It was a promise. And as the applause thundered on, Naomi Carter stood tall at the center of it all, not just as the CEO of Skynova Airways, but as the architect of a new horizon, one where the skies at last could be clear. The chandeliers glittered like stars above the grand ballroom, casting golden light over polished marble floors and velvet-draped tables. It was the annual International Aviation Gala, where the most powerful figures in the industry gathered: executives, regulators, innovators, and competitors alike. For decades, the event had been a stage for announcements, for polished speeches about fuel efficiency and expansion routes. But tonight, the air was different. Tonight, every eye was on one woman, Naomi Carter. As she walked onto the stage in an elegant black gown, the applause swelled, thunderous and unrelenting. Reporters jostled for angles. Cameras flashed like lightning. Her name was already etched in the headlines, but tonight, her presence alone commanded the room. The host, an aging industry veteran, smiled as he handed her the Crystal Award. For courage, for leadership, and for showing us that dignity can reshape the skies, he said, his voice trembling with sincerity. Ladies and gentlemen, we honor Naomi Carter. The applause rose again, filling the cavernous hall until it seemed the walls themselves might burst. Walter sat at the front table, his tuxedo crisp, but his hands trembling as he clutched a champagne glass. He had lived through decades of hardship, seen his daughter climb against every odds, and yet nothing could have prepared him for this moment. Tears pooled in his eyes as Naomi turned to face the audience, the award in her hand catching the light like a beacon. She spoke simply, without theatrics. "This recognition is not just for me," she said, her voice carrying softly but firmly through the hall. "It is for every passenger who has felt invisible, for every worker who has questioned their worth, for every person told they did not belong. The skies belong to all of us, and at Skynova, they always will." Her words washed over the audience like a tide, steady and undeniable. People rose to their feet, the applause no longer for a title or a corporation, but for the idea she embodied. Walter's chest swelled. His voice broke as he whispered to himself, then louder, unable to hold back. "You don't just own the skies, you change them." His tablemates glanced at him, some smiling gently, others nodding, recognizing the depth of his pride. And then came the final twist. Richard Sloan, the businessman who had once sat silently beside Naomi in seat 1C, now stepped onto the stage. A man of immense influence, known for his vast empire in logistics and aerospace partnerships, he carried a contract folder in his hand. Naomi arched an eyebrow, the faintest smile tugging her lips as he approached. "Ms. Carter," Richard said into the microphone, "there was a time when I wondered whether Skynova could compete on the global stage. But after witnessing what you've built, not just an airline, but a movement, I no longer wonder. I act. He turned to the crowd, holding up the folder. "Tonight, I am proud to announce a strategic partnership between Skynova Airways and Sloan Global Logistics. Together, we will expand routes, integrate fleets, and place Skynova not just among competitors, but among leaders worldwide." The ballroom erupted. Applause, cheers, a surge of excitement. Reporters nearly fell over themselves scrambling to broadcast the news. Investors in the crowd lit up, their minds already calculating the global reach, the profit margins, the future dominance of Skynova. Walter clapped until his palms ached, pride so fierce it was almost unbearable. Her enemies doubted her. Her allies questioned her. And now, she stands taller than them all. Naomi shook Richard's hand, her expression composed. She accepted the partnership not with the giddy excitement others might have shown, but with the calm grace that had defined her every move since Flight 227. When the speeches ended and the cameras pivoted elsewhere, Naomi quietly descended the stage. She did not bask in the spotlight, did not linger for endless photos. She slipped into the crowd, the award still in her hand, moving with the silence of someone who no longer needed validation. She paused at the edge of the ballroom, looking out at the glittering lights, the clinking glasses, the voices rising in praise. For a fleeting moment, her eyes softened. Then she turned, exhaled, and walked away. No fanfare, no grand gesture, just the quiet power of a woman who had rewritten the rules. The cameras caught it. The image of Naomi Carter stepping down from the stage, her expression serene, her presence commanding even in silence. The photo would circulate the next morning, captioned simply, "Power doesn't need noise." Walter watched her go, his heart both heavy and full. He knew she would never stop. That was her gift and her burden. But tonight, he allowed himself the peace of knowing the world had finally seen what he had always known. Naomi Carter didn't just fly above the storm. She changed the skies forever.